Top of the morning to ya. Would you like a cup of tea? Do you like tea? Well, tea expert Lisa Tavakoli recently stopped by to talk tea. As former owner of Hallowed Herbs in Quincy, and now involved in a more mobile effort called Traveling Teapot, Lisa knows a thing or two about how to make the perfect cuppa. You don't even have to take my word for it, because she's going to show you herself. Hello, this is Joe COLLYMORE, and welcome back to Close-Ups. Today's episode features the Traveling Teapot, and my guest today is Lisa Tavakoli. Hi, Lisa, and
Hi,
welcome.
Joe. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Lisa, I understand you're an educator, a tea enthusiast, and an environmental steward. Now, could you just share with me a little bit about your background?
Well, it's a long story, so I'll try to abbreviate it.
All right.
I'm from the East Coast. I've been from Massachusetts, and I have lived in Quincy most of my life, and I reside in Braintree now. I owned a tea room in Quincy for about 5 years, but now I speak and put on presentations and travel around and put my energies in that direction. And I knew I was brought up in the restaurant business. Okay. My father and grandfather owned a business in Boston, and I think I have that entrepreneurial spirit. So I knew I wanted to open up a business, and it was more about what I wanted to invoke in that business, how I wanted people to feel rejuvenated, refreshed. And as I evolved with friends going to tea, I ended up studying, herbalism at one point, and tea is a plant. And I ended up going to my first World Tea Expo, which was the World Tea East. It was in Rhode Island, and I was hooked. And so after that, I continued to go to the World Tea Expos. They've been in Georgia, in Las Vegas. I've been to several of them. I've been training with the Specialty Tea Institute. I have my level 3 certification. It evolved into me opening up my business.
Tea, and it's interesting. I mean, here we are in Massachusetts. We see more coffee, right. I think, perhaps. Or maybe that's just my own awareness. You know, this is the hometown of Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Mary Lou's. I mean, you can go on and on and on, all the different coffees. But there's a place for tea. And could you share with us, from your perspective, how tea fits within our society and our culture here in this country?
Sure. Well, tea is the number 2 consumed beverage around the world, only after water. So most of the people around the world drink tea over coffee, but we are a coffee drinking nation. And the interesting thing is the majority, about 80% of Americans that drink tea, drink iced tea. And people drink it all year round. So I'm not really sure where that kind of came from, how they started drinking that. But the tradition of having tea, afternoon tea, high tea, did originate in Europe. But there were cultures that were drinking tea far, far ahead of the Europeans.
And you also do tea workshops, presentations, demonstrations, if you will. As I understand, you've done tea demonstrations in Milton and Quincy, and most recently here in Hingham.
Right.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, last night I just had a tea and chocolate pairing at the Milton Library.
Okay.
And I have, I guess I have 2 sides. I have the tea and I have the herbs. So I have programs where I offer tea programs, and then I offer herbal programs. And tea, a lot of people say I'll have a chamomile tea or a mint tea, and they use tea in a generic way, but those aren't really teas, those are tisanes. So tea is from the Camellia sinensis plant, and then all the teas that we drink, white, green, yellow, oolong, black, and pu'er, those are the 6 major categories, those are all from the Camellia sinensis plant.
And when you use tea in a medicinal form, oftentimes someone might have an upset stomach, or you take some chamomile tea to sleep at night, for example, and so the term tea is used rather loosely,
Right.
because not all green teas, camellia, and the like are teas, but rather are herbs, if you will, within the beverage itself. But could you share a little bit more about ways in which one would enjoy tea, either socially or using for medicinal purposes? What are your experiences there?
Well, they can be used both. And my mind's going to herbs right now,
Okay.
because, there are beverage herbs and medicinal herbs. And some of them can be combined. But tea actually has a lot of health benefits. And I think what I like to impart to people is how you make really great tea to get the best health benefits. And when we make a cup of tea, and we're really only getting about 20% of the health benefits of what that tea gives. 80% of it is still in the leaf and is gone. So tea has been known to help with cardiovascular health. It's bone fluoride. It's good for the teeth. It lowers cholesterol. It's known to help with heart disease because of the cholesterol, lowers blood pressure, reduces body fat. But a lot of it is, and the antioxidants. A big word is epigallocatechin gallate. Catechins.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, the catechins are we've heard of flavonoids and antioxidants. It's which prevents the free radicals from going on rampage in your body, and so they reduce those. And so there's just great things about tea. It is a stimulant. There is caffeine in tea. So tea, unlike coffee, has L-theanine in it. So where coffee, you spike with the caffeine, the L-theanine gives you more of a curve, and it gives you also a relaxing sensation, which is as well as the stimulating effects of caffeine. So it's very healthy, but how you make it, the quality of what you get, and how you make it, and I personally believe that how we take something in, like I used to teach cooking classes, and I would say to people, if you're having a bad day and you're teaching and you're cooking for your family, maybe you don't want to put all that negative energy into that food. Maybe you want to have takeout tonight. But I really believe that our energy goes into what we're making, and it's evident in how it's produced too, because the people that process tea, the steps involved, they're really masters at it.
That's very nice. One of the things that we're going to do, and we're going to share with our viewers the process of brewing tea. So we'll go to the kitchen and do that. But before we do, I'd like to focus a little bit more around this traveling teapot, and what that represents, and what do you do as you go about giving these types of presentations?
Well, I hope to, my goal with every presentation, with every venue I go to, is to demystify, if you will. Sometimes we don't try things because we're not sure how. So to give those initial stepping stones, and it's not brain science. It's just more about focus and really deliberation and your choices, because all our choices affect, talking about the environment, everything we do has a result, has an effect. And so, do I buy fair trade teas? Are the people producing these being taken care of? How are they, sustainability, how are they working on the tea plantations? Are they giving back to the earth? Things like that.
And so your collection of cups are fascinating. And before we rolled the cameras, I was turning over some of the cups and reading where they're from and how they're fired. A lot of them, if not all, are from England. Tell me a bit more about them.
No, they're not all from England.
Okay.
I have many different cups from different places. How
many cups do you have in your collection?
I have more than I can count, well over 100. Prior to opening the tea house, I used to sneak in the house and the kids would say, "Oh, what do you have, Mom?" And I'd be like, "Nothing," and I'd be bringing boxes of teacups and putting them in the closet because I thought people are going to think I'm nuts, So, but they all got good use. These teacups really mean a lot to me, because each one of them, because they were used readily in the tea house, and everybody put their energy into it. They sat at tables and they were enjoyed by customers, and stories and camaraderie and the togetherness, everything is in those cups. And I used to tell people a lot of times, our new generations, they really don't want this stuff. Minimalists maybe. But I always say that, if you have that favorite china set that you're waiting for that time to use, there's a saying that it has no life to it unless it's used. So it's important to use what you have. Oh.
I like that. It is important. If it's not used, then is it there just to look at and not really appreciate? Any other misnomers, if you will, about tea? When you have your demonstrations and your guests arrive, and what kind of questions are they asking? What kind of assumptions might they have that may not necessarily be accurate about tea?
People want to know about the caffeine factor.
Okay.
And caffeine does have tea. There are things that they might have heard, like infusing the tea and then emptying that and then making another. But the caffeine doesn't actually infuse till after a few minutes. Chemicals, there are many chemicals in plants and in tea. And so they're all interacting together and infusing in the water at different times. So what I urge people to do, there is decaffeinated tea, but you lose a lot of the flavor with that. And you do want to get a natural decaffeination. You don't want it to be chemically decaffeinated.
Okay.
So the other thing that I mention is that maybe add some more herbals and a little bit of tea. So the other thing is tea, there's this from non-oxidized to oxidized. So the non-oxidized having less caffeine, but that you can't really gauge that unless it's in the lab. So for instance, on the continuum, like you have green, oolong, black, but you're going to have a green tea that might have more caffeine in it than a black tea. It's how it's processed.
Okay.
And matcha is actually, the catechins are what brings the caffeine into the plant. We mentioned that a little
Yes.
earlier.
Yes.
And matcha is a whole tea of its own, because we consume 100% of the matcha, and what they do, it's from Japan, and what they do is they cover the plants the last several weeks of growth in the chlorophyll. You know, the plant is always reaching for the sun, right? So the plant is growing and it's trying to reach up, and the chlorophyll really gets concentrated in the catechins, and that's why matcha is very high in antioxidants. Very good.
Speaking of matcha, I know that is part of the plan of what we're going to do, and we're going to brew some tea. So let's make our way over there and get started with some tea.
All right, let's do this.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we are here in our kitchen with Lisa Tavakoli and the Traveling Teapot, and we're actually going to now make some tea.
We are.
So, where do we start first, Lisa?
Well, I brought some samples of some of the types of tea.
Okay.
I said earlier that there are 6 types of tea. That's the green tea. This is white tea.
Ah, all right.
We could open them up too.
Okay.
And we have the oolong.
Ah, yes.
And
It's a very
we
familiar
have a
tea.
black tea, Darjeeling.
Ah,
So
yes.
tea grows many different places around the world, and certain countries are known for certain teas. So this is the oolong. Taiwan and China are known for their oolongs. This is a Taiwanese tea.
Okay.
And they can be not very oxidized to really highly oxidized. And right here, if you smell this, they're very aromatic. A lot of what they do is when they plant these trees, they plant them around groves with other fruit trees, because the roots on the tea plant are very big, and they pull up what's in the soil. So a lot of times the leaf will also have some of those characteristics of what's being planted around them. So oolongs are made to infuse several different times, and they actually get better with each infusion.
I see.
So this is the hojicha. This is a green tea. This is from Japan. Chinese and Japanese green teas are processed very differently.
Okay.
The Japanese green teas tend to be more grassy, very clear, very bright and brisk in the cup. This hojicha is processed a little differently. The stems are used, and it's roasted. So you're actually not getting like the green leaf.
Very nice. Can I reach in and
Sure.
pour a little bit out?
That's
rather?
a great idea.
There we go.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yes, I can see that. The roots that are also part of that tea. All right, what else do we have going on here?
So this is the white tea, and white teas are traditionally from China, and white tea used to be one plant, a varietal, but now white has expanded to how it's processed. So there are many white teas. There's not just one white tea. And this is a blended white, and they're very light, clear. This is from China. This has been blended with a little bit of vanilla and rose petals.
Okay.
And then we have a traditional Darjeeling, which is from India. This is from the Siok estate. There's several estates in India growing Darjeeling, so there are many different estates. And that's a black tea. Black teas are traditionally from China and India, and they're very different. Darjeeling is a tea that, this is a specialty tea, so no need to put milk in, but Indian teas are made to add milk, where Chinese teas black teas you wouldn't add milk.
I see.
So over here we have some water boiling, and
now you were telling me earlier about certain levels of the water boiling being ideal for certain types of tea. So for example, the steam coming off of the the water
Right.
suggests, it indicates
For
that
a
it's
white tea.
for white tea.
Right.
All right.
So that's the non-oxidized tea.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't want to put boiling water on top of it because you're going to shock the leaf.
I see.
Okay.
And then when you have little tiny bubbles
Right.
on
Turn it
the
up.
bottom of the tea.
Right. Let me get that up a little bit more. The bottom bubbles that you see,
Yes.
there, just coming
Yes.
up. They
Okay.
kind of, we lost them off the, there we go. That would be like green tea.
Okay.
And then when they start to come up to the top surface, little fish eyes,
Okay.
they actually those
Sounding like
are
that.
the fish eyes. When they start
Ah.
to come up to the top and you see like the pearls, the water is kind of running on top. That would be for oolong, and then a rapid boil would be for black tea. So you never want to pour the water once it's done directly on the leaf. You want to just let it sit for a minute. Okay?
Okay.
Because what happens is the leaf is very delicate and it'll close down. So you want it to, be able to open it up and impart those volatile oils and the aromas. This has been steeping in the pot. So each time it's steeped,
Yes.
it actually opens up even more and more. And they say, the fourth, fifth, sixth, really well-made oolongs can be steeped many, many, many times and still get a really good cup of tea from them.
That's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And people ask a lot about rinsing their leaves.
Yes.
And oolongs and pu'er, I don't have pu'er here, they're made to rinse because of the fact that you would reuse them. But if you rinsed like the white tea, you'd lose all the flavor. So,
Interesting.
so you don't need to rinse the, nature does that.
Now, earlier we talked about cooking, and I shared with you that, and I like to cook, and there are occasions when I'll take like coffee beans and rub it into a steak, for example.
Right.
And you were sharing with me that one could do the same thing with tea.
Oh, certainly. Cooking
me
with
more about
tea is
that.
wonderful. I used to cook at my tea house a lot with tea. It's a wonderful pairing too, because you're going to actually offer the cup of tea with the meal as well as incorporate it into what you're cooking. So I made a lot of desserts with tea.
Okay.
The tea can be infused in a liquid like milk, and then the milk can be used in desserts. But they can be made into rubs.
So, for example, if I wanted to rub a salmon,
Right.
what kind of tea might you recommend?
Well, maybe I'm thinking sencha, like a green Japanese tea would be really nice. So,
And if I were to use rub it on a steak or a piece of
I mentioned
Pork?
earlier, lapsang souchong is a smoky tea. It's kind of infused with pine, and it's a very distinct tea, and that would hold up very well with meats. So they're
nice to know.
Yeah, and then you can make broths with the tea, and you can use that to cook with. So there's many things you can do with the tea.
All right. So when do we get to try and taste some of the
Okay.
teas?
Do you have your?
I do
your
have
cup?
my cup.
All right.
Now you're using this filter. And some of us, like myself, we have infusers at home. Tell me why this particular mesh screen perhaps might be a little bit more effective than the popular infusers.
Well, especially with oolongs, because they need to expand. These pots are designed in this shape so the leaf can turn in the pot.
Okay.
They were specifically designed for that. And so if you keep something enclosed, it can't open up and release all those great flavors that the tea has to offer. So there are some, it's called cut, tear, curl. It's a certain production of tea. They're like small pellets, something like that. Usually you get those like in black teas. That would be the best way if you were going to use an infuser, like one of the balls. So, do you want to taste?
Yes, let's give this a taste. Awesome.
Oh.
This is good.
Can you taste the buttery?
Yes, I can. Here.
Well, I brought this. This is actually a cupping. Cupping. Do you want to turn that up a little?
Sure.
A cupping set. This is really like a professional cupping set, but these can be ordered online. And so you would put your tea in here, and you would pour the water in here.
Okay.
And you would measure the tea in the water to the precise amount of tea.
All right.
And this is about 6 ounces, and you do like 2.2 ounces of tea. If you were going to do something more professionally to really taste the tea that you're getting, to see if you like it. But if you want to just, in more of a relaxed way, it's still a good way to sample your teas. You can see it has a little hole here.
Right.
And it has some grooves. We're going to open that up. So this would sit, and this would infuse. I use a timer when I infuse my teas. So
It's good to have a timer.
right, because teas take different times.
Sure.
Depending on the tea.
And so when it's ready, it just sort of sets in this
So then what you
position?
would do is you would just pour it out
Okay.
like this and let it.
I'll slide it forward.
Yeah.
There we go. Now,
Actually, it's over here, isn't it?
this is good.
Oh, the front, the pan.
Now, finally, tell me a little bit about this.
Well, matcha is a tea that you, as I said earlier, that you ingest all of the entire leaf. So it's a very complex process. You can see with the tea leaf has the ribs and the vein. That's all removed before they grind the matcha down. This one is.
Okay. I see. Smells well.
There's culinary matcha,
Okay.
and there's culinary matcha, and there's ceremonial matcha. So a matcha that's very brilliant in color, a very, very brilliant emerald green, and then one that's very fine is a higher grade matcha. And the Japanese tea ceremony is very complex. The Japanese and Chinese tea ceremonies are well known, but there are several items that are used in the Japanese, like there's over like 65 items that they use to actually put on a Japanese tea ceremony.
Nice.
So, but I thought, do you want to
Sure.
see this one? So this is the white tea, and what they would do is you would turn this over, and actually, did I put enough in there? It's not coming out there. But the leaf would come out here,
Yes.
and you would smell it,
I see.
and then drink the
Very
tea,
nice.
and it's wide enough to see the color of it.
Okay.
So, all tea is healthy. People ask me that, and all tea is healthy. It's the quality of what you buy, it's how it's made, and it's your energy putting into the cup. And many health benefits to it. It's a relaxing beverage, and it really induces a time of stillness. Because you said as a lifestyle, a time where we take a moment to be in the space we're in. And I think that's important today with our busy lifestyles.
Well, I want to toast you again. Come on over here.
Okay.
And I want to thank Lisa Tavakoli and the Traveling Teapot. This concludes our episode for Close-Ups. See you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Lisa.